right, so again, what I asked you to do was to go out to the P drive for the class. The in-class folder, and there's a folder there with today's date on it, and it's called Future Value. It's got two versions in it. The first version is the one that we did the other day, so I'm not going to go over that one. The second one is a new one, so I am going to go over that one. All right, so I've already got it on the system here. And I moved stuff around since then, so I'm going to close all that. First thing I'd like to show you as you take a look at it, and I'll bring it up on the screen here. I mentioned this to you the other day, but I can't say this to you too much. I'm going to expect that you're going to start doing a separation of things. In other words, notice there's a folder called CSS where the CSS goes. My include files, I've got a header include and a footer include. They're in the includes folder. If this gets too cumbersome in here, that I have too many files right underneath there, I'll make yet another folder. All right. If I was going to be creating an administrative interface, I'd have an admin folder. Does all that make sense? All right. You know, the place for everything in its place. But again, there's just one CSS file in here. There's just two include files, and there's these two files. So I'm going to bring all of them up, and we're going to go over all of them, and however long that takes, and then whatever time is left is just lab time, or if you've got the first assignment done. All right, and I still have to get those grades out there, but if you get those done, if you have those done, then you can take off. All right, but I want to go through all of these documents, all the stuff that's in here. All right, first let me run it. I think we call it folder. Yeah, I think it's just called Future Value. All right. Now, when you look at what's in here, this was the old version. I'm not, just to show you, remember that. Same stuff. It looks different now. But just so you remember that, and again, if we put in non-numeric stuff, we got a different message. If we put negative stuff in there, you know, we got another message. If we put in stuff that was okay, and we clicked, all right, now everything's in there. So how does this change? Well, notice if I go to the second one now, all right, some CSS has been put in there, so it looks a little bit nicer. It's centered on the screen. But notice now if I click calculate, it just shows me, basically I put the whole thing in a big if statement. So it's going to check everything. And only if I put valid values in here, and in here, will it actually go and run. Does that make sense to everyone? But notice, because I'm going to run the gamut here, I'm going to show you all 9 possible errors. Leaving investment off. Putting something non-numeric in investment, putting a negative number in investment, all right? Then putting nothing in the interest rate, putting non-numeric in the interest rate, putting a negative number in the interest rate, all right? So now if that's okay, well, yeah, I want 34%. Number of years, years is required. Years must be a valid number. Years must be positive. All right, so now finally, if I do all this, and please take a look up on the screen here, I think you'd all agree this is under display results, etc. Now notice if I come here and I say this and I put in 24, all right, calculate. Now it basically is moved. So you see, do you understand what's happened here? All right, technically it didn't really move, but just so you know that. All right, and we're going to change and do some work on this also in the next class, but I wanted to show you these. So the first thing to realize as we look through all the code here, let's just take it from the top. All right, just picked an Arial font. I like Arial. You may not like Arial. Am I right in assuming that, you know, when you took the 157 class, that Arinda, you at least did one time where you wrote some CSS like this as a class, and she went over what all that stuff meant? Okay, good. All right. The Navy that's in here, that's just my H1 tag. Okay, and the other thing is, again, the error. In the first version, remember I took I only had a little bit of CSS, so I put it inline in version 1, if you remember that. Now it's not. We've added it down here. So any error code is going to be red and bold. So I don't think there's anything more we have to say about that. The header. If I wanted to put this in here, okay, if I wanted to put some PHP, I would put it up there in the top. But this is saying anytime I include this file, put it in my HTML doc type, my HTML tag, my head tag, my title tag, link to my CSS file. I don't know, that shouldn't be there. That was good. All right. And my head tag, and then my body. Does that all make sense? All right. What's going to change when we come in here next week is we're going to put a session start in there. Just so you're aware of that. We're going to put that in. All right. I'm still tinkering with that one. I got it where it's working, but I don't think it's working the way it should be working. So I'm still working with version 3 of this. All right. So again, yours originally, if you look up on the screen here, yours had this in there because I foolishly forgot to remove it. So make sure you remove it on yours. In the footer, that's all that's in there. So we'll probably want to basically not end our session here, but we'll want to flush our buffer right here. And the idea with a header file like this, if I'm going to put in here, so if I come in here and I put in session_start, okay, that starts a session. I want to always make sure I do that before there's any possibility of writing out any HTML. You have to do that near the top. And if you don't, you're going to get one of these weird headers already sent messages. All right? The other thing I might end up doing here is I might end up buffering a bunch of stuff in here. We'll talk about that next time. Up here, again, this is probably where I would want to release the stuff that's in the buffer, so have it actually show. And this is just ending. So in other words, what I want to do, and no excuse, I just didn't do it. What I want to do is I want to come in here and start making this look a little nicer. So eventually what we'd have in here, in our body right there, is we would have a header section. You know, the HTML5 header tags, so we'd have that in there. And we would have probably some kind of, maybe even a header group. All right, and I might have like an H1 tag that said something, whatever the something was. And I might have an H2 tag in here that said something else. And then in my H2. Then come in here and end my header group. All right. Then I would come in here and put in my nav bar. Some people believe that the nav bar should be in the header. Some people believe it should be below the header, but not inside of the header. All right. So we put in here, and we'll have, I'm just going to put a comment here. Hyperlinks go here. All right, then I end my nav. What I'm telling you is what we want to eventually do is build this up so it's a site. And we want to have multiple pages in here. We want to be able to traverse from page to page. Does that make sense? I think I showed you this, but in case I didn't the other day, and it's okay. It's nothing I'm super proud of or anything like that, but this is the one that, because I asked the students in the first year students to build their own website, and I said I'll build one too, and just to show them that I indeed built one, and it's nothing great. You go, yeah, it's all black. It's really nothing great. And all it has in it right now is, come on, all right, some form validation stuff. Okay, and I got a little bit of stuff down here. So it's got the header, it's got the footer, and I can come in here, a little bit of about stuff for about form validation. I got to play with the color. I don't like that, as you probably guess. And we're going to learn how to validate a form using JavaScript, and then how to go back and do virtually all of it just with HTML. All right. And the only reason I'm showing you this is, again, as we build this, I'm going to be building it with you. Does that make sense? It's not going to be a future value. We're going to build a very, very simple, we're going to start building a simple e-commerce site. All right, and we'll have just a couple pages in it. How many pages? However many we can get done between now and December 11th. All right, if that's 3, then there will be 3 pages. Okay, and then we're going to just keep working on that next semester. All right. So I'm taking for granted that you all understand the CSS file, the header inc, and the footer inc. Am I correct with that? Okay. Then let's take a look at the actual two. I don't want to save that. All right, let's take a look at these two. Here's our index page. So this is what runs when we start. And it's written a little bit different, but I want you to see what's going on in here. I wish I'd have done that, but no biggie. All right. Now, what this is saying right here, notice the code that's in there. That's even before you're going and displaying the form. So we're breaking out, we're saying if the error messages are not empty, show whatever the error message is. Does that make sense? So if there is an error message, show it. And the way that this is written right now, again, it's in a big if-else statement. So it only is going to show one error at a time. So even if I screwed up and did 3 or 4 things I shouldn't have done, it's only going to show one of them. Did it have to be written like this? No. But I wanted to show you yet another way of writing it as opposed to the way I showed you the first time where we put all the error messages along the side. All right. So there's our action. When it comes up, all right, when we first start running it, what should be running here is our index file. But almost immediately it's going to display the results. This should look real familiar because it's the same stuff we had earlier. Label for the investment amount, then the text box, and we're making it sticky. The label for the yearly interest rate, okay? The text box, and we're making it sticky. The label for the years, the text box, sticky, all right, and then our submit button. So again, what that is showing you is just the simplest of stuff, so to speak. That. All right. And when I first did it, I had the same thing that Kelly had. I forgot to make them sticky. So I got that same kind of message you had. I thought, well, I know what that is now because I'd seen the same exact thing on Kelly's. All right. This is just something I'm taking for granted that you all understand. This is just good protocol to make stuff sticky and to check and see whether or not, in other words, no one should ever run your app and find error messages in your text boxes. That to me is unacceptable. All right, that just looks very unprofessional. All right, so once you put the stuff in, what we said there was, now we want to go, notice we're going to another page. All right, so rather than having everything in the page here, we've got 2 different pages. This page, when you look at it, the only HTML that's, the only PHP in this page is our includes at the beginning and at the end. Our check right here to see if basically whether or not we should stay on the page or leave the page, and our stickiness. All of our logic is in the other file. Why? Because again, that is good practice to do things like that. Am I right in assuming that when I say that, that makes sense to you? All right. It's just the same way that, you know, with the 119 class. Those of you who had me for the 119 for the JavaScript, you know, and John will tell you I'm making him do it this year too. Even though the book that I use, she writes everything in her HTML. I don't let people do that. All right. So we're getting the data from the form here. Those are our 3 fields. So those 3 fields, again, are these 3 fields: investment amount, yearly interest rate, and number of years. So there they are. Then we're making our checks here. If it's empty, it's that message. Otherwise, if it's non-numeric, it's that message. Otherwise, if it's less than 0. So all of this stuff here, these 3 checks, are just for the investment. All right. Then if those all succeed, then we come down and we do the next 3 to validate the interest rate. The same kinds of checks. Just so you know, and think about this, it would have been possible to write only 3 functions. I could have written 3 different functions because I'm doing the same thing every time. So you could make a case and say, yeah, Jeff, you really should have just made an empty function, a numeric function, and an interest rate function, and had them return false, in other words, and then not gone on. That's another way we could have done it. If I think about it, I'll try to do that for the next version, okay? All right, and then finally we do the same thing for the years. Same 3 checks. So if we get down to the else that's right here, if we get down to there, that means, as it says, set our error message to empty because there wasn't anything wrong. Does that make sense? All right. And then we check. This is a way of doing this. Somebody tell me, well, I guess the comment says it, but that says if you had an error, I'm popping you back to that other page. That's reloading the page. That's one way of doing it. That's doing an include, putting a regular PHP file. Boom, it throws it right in there. It does it, but then again, after it goes through index.php, it jumps right back to this file. So you put exit in there that says, once you jump back, get the hell out of this file. Does that make sense? Because you want it to run through there and do the future value again? Because there was an error. All right. So if there isn't, this says if there's any error, push them back to the page they were on, and then make sure you get out of the routine. If we could have put an else here, but it's really kind of irrelevant because this would be the else. So if you get down here, there weren't any errors. So you do the future value calculation. Right in here, you format all that stuff. All right. You end up printing it out down there. All right. And then when you're done, that's it. So what do we have down here? The same kind of stuff. Now, this was a little overkill, just so you know. If you've gotten to this page, if you have gotten to this page and there's an error, you should have been pushed back to the previous page. But I still came in here and still put that in. I'd rather be sure, even if the program runs a little slower, I'd rather make sure that it looks more professional. And let's face it, 99 times out of 100, your boss is not going to look at your code. And chances are, if your boss looks at your code, they're going to be ignorant as to what it does anyway. They're not going to look at it and go, Zane, did you really have to do an is set right there? But it may be that if you're doing an application that's real-time sensitive, that they're finding that the app is running too slow. Then you could remove something like that. With what we're doing right now, it doesn't really matter because there's, what's the difference between running and having it take 600ths of a second and 800ths of a second? Not really anything, right? Can't blink your eye that fast anyway. All right. So what I want to do with the next one, and I've started showing you this, but again, there's some problems with it, but I'm going to show you. I haven't added, so I've just been building this incrementally. Gotta see, I've got it in here someplace. So I think it's this one, but I'm not sure. No. Okay, it might be future value test. No. Okay, fine. Then I better look for it. Because I want to show you what we're going to be going into next class. So we'll work with sessions. Looks a lot like it did before. So notice, $1,000. I'm not going to run through the error stuff. 4%, 5 years. Boom. Now notice how it says future value sessions right there. Submit. I went to an output page. I know what that error is. Don't worry about that. And like I said, this is where I'm still working on that. Okay. So we're going to be pushed out to another page, but we're going to do it using sessions. Notice now, return to home page. That's pretty obvious what just happened. All right. Not that it's a big thing one way or the other, and I'll tell you this, and you might say, who cares, but I think it's kind of cool. That's a line of JavaScript to do that. So literally, I use PHP to write JavaScript. Yes, that's what I want to move to eventually. Yeah. But I didn't, okay? And that's the kind of thing you're going to do, like I said, with the Joes, and because I listen, and when people complain that they're having way too much homework, hear them. So what I'll do for your next homework is I'll just have you take the Joe's one, just one. Just take that Joe's one so you can start thinking about this. You're going to add sessions to it, and what I want you to do is when you submit the Joe's and it submits correctly, I want you to bring up another form where on that form you will basically, however you want to do it, you can be as intricate, as ornate, as whatever as you want to be, but you'll make a bill for Joe's. And you use sessions to move all that data over into the bill. Does that make sense? And you'll allow the user also to go back in case they made a mistake or whatever. So you'll keep the stuff sticky in there. You saw my stuff wasn't even sticky. Yes. Yeah, that's a couple people that told me that, and again, I blame myself. Yeah, everybody hear that? In the Joes, there were some errors. I did not put them in purposely. But no, what I did though was I started writing it one way and then decided halfway into it I wanted to write it another way, and I didn't remove everything. But then to try to make sure I did, I changed the names of some stuff. And then I didn't remove all those things. So that, no, I don't do that. All right? No. So if you got that to work, then good for you. Seriously. All right? Yeah, it basically worked, but there were a few issues with the program the way it was. So again, what you'll have to do next time is you will have to create another form, and that form, I'm not going to grade it based on how beautiful it is, but it would be kind of nice if you made it look somewhat professional. Because again, if you're ever showing this to a potential employer and you say, oh, we use sessions here and we put all this stuff into a form and from this we generated a bill. And if all you do is you put an HTML table out there, I'm sorry, that looks pretty pukey. But if you actually make it look like a bill would look, you're making it look like you took the assignment seriously and you tried to do something professional with it. And since that's the only form you have to create, I don't think that's going to be asking that much of you. All right. So although it's only 3:30, that's really all that I had because I'm still working on the next version. So that'll be version 3 of the future value. We'll do that. All right. And there may be a version 4, I don't know. But by this time, or we'll be at least done with version 3 on Thursday. And if we finish all of it by then next week, what I'll do is I'll give you your next assignment. I already told you what it was, but I'll write it up. All right. And that's all that I had. So tomorrow, we're going to continue on with the iOS program with the tip calculator. All right. We're going to look at the code. All right. Hopefully, there's a chance we might even finish all the code tomorrow. There's not a lot of code in there. I showed it to you already. So we're going to start putting that in. If everybody gets it to work, cool. Yeah. There you go. And then next week, we'll just move on. And I'm going to ask you, because there's a couple different ways that we can go, and I'm going to ask you which way you'd rather go, and I'll let you vote or whatever. You know. If it's a tie, we'll let Laura and Amanda vote. Well, no, Laura's in the class, so we'll let Amanda vote. All right. It's going to be a blast. Always is. You know what? There's never a good day. Period. I'm actually the one, the last 3 times we've had meetings, I'm the one who's finally started sending out emails when you guys want to have a meeting. And it was supposed to actually be last month. But Arinda is a hockey mom, and she had hockey. So this was the first time she had a Tuesday, and they wanted it on Tuesday. So I said, fine. And I kept saying, and then how about the 7th? How about the 14th? Finally got to the 21st, and no one complained. So I told Jennifer, why don't you plan it for the 21st? And everybody's got a week, so if they can't make it, to let you know. Nobody let her know. So that's how it ended up being that way. And I'm saying that I'm not a hero, but it just ticks me off that nobody else takes any initiative here. But yet we know who the problem child is. And that's good, because that was all taped.